chapter 22, verse 31. The Lord had a warning for Simon or Peter of the fact that Satan had desired. He says there in verse 31, Luke 22, 31, and the Lord said, Simon, Simon, behold, Satan hath desired to have you, that he may sift you as wheat. But I prayed for thee, that thy faith fail not, and when thou art converted, strengthen thy brethren. So just the whole idea here, we're familiar with this passage, but I think that, and I pointed this out in a devotional not too long ago, that the devil is real, and that he has a desire for God's people. And I think that we looked at for a moment the fact that, Satan's desire, of course, is to attack or devour those that are off to themselves, those that are, try to handle things or do things on their own. Those are good sheep, wandering sheep that Satan likes to attack. Those that are dealing with personal problems, being overwhelmed with certain things. As we see here, Satan also goes after them. And, because, of course, the goal is to disrupt and to tear down and to try to, remove one's confidence in the Lord. And the interesting thing here is that, with all of those, one of the things that I failed to mention, and it's very important, but we can look at it with Peter. You can even say that Satan's after those that are overconfident. I think those are sometimes we don't think about, is that if we're overconfident in the Lord, that, that'll never happen to me, or Satan won't, I'll be too strong for that. Watch out, Peter, and that's what Peter said. He was one that was overconfident, and he had thought that, he was exempt from leaving the Lord, exempt from doing anything against the Lord. And of course, he found out that Satan here, and we're getting this, what Brother Josh said, he loves those behind the scenes type scenarios that we don't know when the conversation happened here, where the Lord knew that Satan had a desire to sift Peter, but evidently it happened, and we can see that the desire there, of course, was something that is, when you look at that word, it's a craving. He had a craving to attack. He had a craving, if you think of an animal that is, they're just licking their chops, or whatever you want to look at as an animal, that is the thing that Satan had a desire to attack. And it wasn't just Peter, it was all of them. Of course, Simon was one that, again, was boastful, and one of the ones that stuck out because he was confident that he wouldn't fall. But we find that Satan, of course, had this desire, and of course we know that he can attack without the Lord's permission, and also that he doesn't have power beyond what the Lord gives him. And so you look at this and understand the people behind the attack. Who is he after? Well, he was after the Lord's church. He was after the Lord's people. He was after those that were close to him. He was after those that were, there with him during his personal ministry. He was there everywhere he went. They were right there. They were right near to him. And you got to remember, of course, Jesus is about to leave, right? He's about to leave. And so they were prime for the attack. And so you look at the fact that he says Satan has desired to have you. The you there is actually plural, and not just Simon, but all of them. And if of course that Satan had a desire for all of them, don't you think he had a desire for all of us, right? I think that's the key as well. And it's not just one individual, but it's all of us. And this attack, this desire, of course, is calculated. It's targeted. It's whatever Satan can do to cause one to stumble, to fall, to deny Christ, as we see here. We see that's his desire. And of course, again, those arrows that he shoots, they're deliberate, they're calculated. Don't think Satan doesn't know what he's doing. He's been doing this for a long time. And this was not the first subject, right? There's been many others that we find and are familiar with that Satan had desire to destroy, sift, and ultimately you could say destroy. But his targets are always specific. His targets are always on calculated, and he knows us as well, probably sometimes better than we do, in our blind spots and our weaknesses. And again, it's those blind spots that really get us, right? And again, being overconfident is a blind spot because you don't know when something's going to come up to where you find you're not as confident, or you find out that you're not as bold or confident as you used to be. But the goal is, of course, again, to drive to discouragement, to drive one out the door, to drive one to a point of feeling alone, to drive one to a point of going to a place of no hope, beyond recovery. And, you find that there's been a lot of casualties over the years, that even in the Bible and even in the Lord's churches, even today, where, some have been sifted. And, of course, the most, the ultimate casualty is, of course, those that, not only those that suffer the loss of their reputation or their testimony, but sometimes the Lord's name takes a hit, and sometimes the Lord's church takes a hit on this. But and Satan, of course, didn't go after Peter because he necessarily hated him or hates us. He's actually out there to again look at those that are potentially harmful to Satan, and also those that really are faithful to the Lord and honoring the Lord. If you are faithful to the Lord, and if you're honoring the Lord, you are the one that he's after. And if anyone glorifies him, we find that you are a prime target of Satan. And so he's looking forward to sift you. And of course, what is the argument that Satan has here? And you look at Job. Job was, again, this was not the first time that this conversation had place, but Job also had this time when the Lord allowed Satan to sift him. And it says in Job 1:7, and the Lord said to Satan, whence comest thou? And then Satan answered the Lord and said, from going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down it. And, the Lord seemed to have confidence in knowing that in all this, that again, before he said, have you considered my servant Job? It seems like the Lord had confidence in Job that he would, be able to handle this, but of course with the Lord's help. But Satan, however, had to get permission again. Verse 8 says, and the Lord said unto Satan, hast thou considered my servant Job, that there is none like him in the earth, a perfect and upright man that feareth God and escheweth evil? Now, you look at this, Satan didn't deny that all those facts were true. They were all true. He was a perfect man or complete man. He was an upright man. He was one that feared God. But notice the accusation. And remember, Revelation says that Satan is a what? He's an accuser of the brethren, right? And this is the accused. He says there in verse 9, and Satan answered the Lord and said, doth Job fear God for naught? Hast not thou made a hedge about him and about his house and about all that he had on every side? And thou hast blessed the work of his hands, and his substance is increased in the land. Put forth thine hand now, and touch all that he hath, and he will curse thee to thy face. And the Lord said to Satan, behold, all that he hath is in thy power, only upon himself put not forth thine hand. So Satan went forth from the presence of the Lord, and all this happened. Notice the argument, though, was from Satan that he doesn't really love you. Job doesn't really love you, right? Peter doesn't really love you. I guarantee you take away your blessings, you take away the hedge, you take away all that stuff, and he doesn't. His love for you is not as real as you think it is. And of course, the Lord knew better. But the point is, there's a trial there, right? There's a trying, there's a sifting, there's a And that word sifting gives the idea of turning. There's a turning, there's a shaking, and that's a violent shaking to get that out of a person, and of really if they love the Lord or not. And when you look at this, you remove the hedge, you remove these blessings, and let's see what they do after that. And so this test, Satan has desired to sift you. And if any of those have studied this, of course, that's the sifting is an agricultural term to separate the wheat from the stalk, or that's with the animals, but then you got to remove the husk from the seed. And so that's done through willowing. And sometimes they use baskets to remove the kernel from the outer husk, the light leaves or dirt or whatever it was. And sometimes you remember Gideon was up on a mountain. He threw it up in the air, and the wind took away all the garbage, but the kernel that was left, the good stuff, they kept that for food. And that's really what God is looking at when he allows Satan to sift us. That sifting is not gentle. That's something that's a violent shaking once again, but the point of it, Satan has a desire to shake you enough to deny the Lord and go the opposite direction, where the Lord says, I think, and I'm praying for you to get through that, to get to the other side, right? He wants to see you march through that and hold on to him through the times of trial. And this is really, of course, when it gets personal, because all of us have, in our walks of life, one way or another, went through some type of seasons of sifting, some type of seasons of trials. And maybe it's not been as violent of a shaking as others, but nevertheless, you know that there's been some type of sifting. And of course, you know, the accusation of Job is the fact that if you are shaken up, what are you going to do with the Lord? Is it going to cause you to draw closer to him? Is it going to cause you to go further away from him? What is it going to do? And so the Lord, of course, again, is looking for the kernel. He's looking for the good stuff. He's looking for all the outer parts of the flesh and all that stuff to be removed, and the good stuff remained. And so, you know, and so all of us have been through that in one time or another. And, you know, it seems as though that sometimes the Lord allows it, those things to happen, sometimes that are beyond our, you know, there's that line or that place where we're comfortable, right? And that's what Satan is saying. Your people are comfortable. You get them uncomfortable. You take away some things. Let's see what they do, right? Let's see what they do. And so, you know, it is a warning, and it is a question for us, you know, when times of trial comes and when things happen that, you know, that seem to be, our life is shaken, and we lose some things, we go through struggles or whatever it is, and sometimes there are struggles beyond our comprehension, or struggles sometimes beyond our own strength. If you remember, Job again lost everything. In materials, he lost his family, lost all these things, but it didn't end there, right? He ended up more. And sometimes you can see that those trials and struggles, they don't sometimes end just in one area. They continue on, they push, they keep on. And to see what you're made of, to see whether or not you will, you know, be one that stays close to the Lord. And I guarantee those that have stood close to the Lord, there's no better place to be than the Lord on the other side. I'm talking about those, like Paul said, I've been knocked down, I've been beat up, but I've got back up, and I went back into the city. Why? Because the love of God and the closeness of God is causing, I'm not going to deny God, I'm going to keep marching for him. And so, you know, Satan has a desire to sift Peter, and again, if he had a desire to sift Peter, we got to think that he's got a desire to sift us as well. And of course, we know that Job was faithful, even when losing all that, and of course, his wife telling him to curse God and die. But you know, this is the kind of faith that Satan's after, and of course, he's saying, "Hey, if you're comfortable right now, remove that comfort, Lord, remove it." Well, he says, you know, remove it, and let's see what they do. But notice the Lord's Prayer, and this is really part of it that I wanted to get to in verse 32. Satan has a desire to sift you, but I've prayed for thee, that thy faith fail not. And when thou art converted, strengthen thy brethren. We talked about having a burden, and of course, when Nehemiah asked the question, how was Jerusalem, how did it go? The only way to have a burden was make it real. Well, Jesus was making it real for Peter, right? He's making it real. This is what's going to happen. Satan has a desire to sift you, and if I'm telling you this, it means it's going to happen. So in looking at this, he said, though, I prayed for thee. And I don't know if you caught that, but it's not like I'm praying for you or I'm going to pray for you. He said, I prayed already for you. Wow. I don't know if you caught that. That's so cool. But what's interesting about this is that we have a Lord that cares. We have a Lord that cares for us. And, when we go through times like this, Peter here, we know that he found himself in a position where, he denied the Lord 3 times. And then, of course, the rooster crows. And, is that look that we always think about in Matthew chapter 26 when, the Lord looks over there and sees him and he just weeps. He wept because he knew that, that he had failed. And when you think about this prayer, he says, I prayed for thee. And this prayer, of course, of the Lord wasn't, I'm going to remove you from the trial. That's not the prayer. He said, I prayed for thee, what? That your faith fail not. You're still going to have to go through these things, but I'm praying that your faith continues on. I pray that you stay close to me. I pray that you hold on to me and believe who I am. And so he doesn't pray to remove the difficulty, but he does pray for Peter as he goes through the difficulty, in that having the strength on the inside, relying on the Lord more than the things that he can control. And I mentioned this many times before, that I've got to learn there's things I can't control, there's things I can control. Well, there's things that we can control in going to the Lord. There's things that we can control of reading his word. There are things that we can control of trying to draw closer. We can't control the things that come at us. And he says, Satan has a desire to sift you. We don't know where that's coming from. I can't control that. But I can control where my closeness to the Lord, right? And so he says, I'm praying that your faith fail not, right? And so we know that after the Lord was risen, and I always read this because it's one of my favorite passages. And, when Peter fell, he said, I go fishing, and of course the others. But he comes to him and says, do you love me, right? Do you love me? Feed my lambs. Do you love me? Feed my sheep. The Lord prayed for him, and he loved him. And I think about Peter from the point where he said, I'll never deny you, to over there when he says, Lord, you know I love you. What a difference. He found out life. Sometimes life has a way of sifting you. Satan has a way of sifting you through life. And sometimes over here, when you're 10 foot tall and bulletproof, you haven't gone through a lot of stuff, you think the world, tail's on fire and everything's happening, but over here you're like, no, I need the Lord. Lord, you know. You know me, right? And so there's a humbling with Peter. But he still cared for him. He didn't give up on him. And so the one thing that the Lord said here too is that when thou art converted, when you are, this of course was encouraging news. Not that when you are saved again, not when you are saved. Peter was already saved, but the idea of restoration. When you come to your senses, when you've asked forgiveness for all this and you get back on the train, if you will, I have a job for you to do. Strengthen your brother. When you think about that, the sifting then was not empty. It was something important that Peter had to go through if he was going to help someone else. A person goes through something to help someone else sometimes. The Lord allows things to happen in your life to help someone else. And so it doesn't go to waste. And so when you think about that, God takes man through these, and of course to get him through there, but to teach others as well. And he tells them, when you are converted, strengthen thy brethren, pray for them, strengthen them, encourage them, help them through times like this. Now, if Peter wouldn't have went through what he did, he wouldn't really know how to do all that. But since he did go through failing the Lord and having to dust himself off and get back up, he could help in areas of weakness. He can help in areas where Satan also tries to sift others. And, Peter's testimony was, an eye-opener and instructive. Peter, I thought I was strong, but I realize I'm not as strong as I thought. But when I was weak, I knew the Lord carried me through, and he prayed for me. I'm going to pray for you, Peter. I prayed for you, and I'm going to get you through. And Peter could say on the other side, that's why I'm still here. That's why I'm still standing. And that's why I'm able to help you today, is because the Lord got me through it. Now, if you think that it was important for the Lord to pray for Peter, then don't you think it's important to pray for one another? I think about this, and the Lord, of course, which is encouraging too, that when Peter fell, the Lord didn't go to Peter and say, "You idiot, I told you you're going to do this." Right? I told you so. No, he just went, "Peter, I love you. I got something more for you to do. I got something more." There was an encouragement there. And so when you look at, for us, oftentimes we are so overwhelmed with our burdens, and that's true. We can bring our burdens to the Lord, and he cares. And but also think about those that are under attack right now. Maybe think about, is there someone here tonight that Satan has a desire to sift? Right? Is there someone here that Satan is sifting? Is there somebody who's on one side of it or the other? And of course, our goal is to help them, to pray for them, and ask the question, who's being sifted? Simon said there, or the Lord said in verse 31, "And the Lord said, Simon, Simon, behold, Satan hath desired to have you, that he may sift you as wheat." Now, if you let those words sink in, Simon, Simon, they don't really mean much, but if you put your name there, all of a sudden it means a whole lot more, right? And sometimes, again, we don't put our name because we don't think it's going to happen. Well, Peter didn't think it was going to happen either. But put your name there, that Satan has a desire to sift you. And so we need to be aware of that. We need to be on guard with that, but also be in prayer for those that maybe Satan has a desire to sift tonight. Maybe they are in the sifting process or whatever it might be. Pray for them that their faith fail not. Encourage them. And so